People who had a secret affair while in a relationship, what's your dirtiest confession? I cheated on my husband with my 57-year-old boss when I was 23. I worked in a small office with a few other women and my boss. He and I were very close, and I thought of him more like a father figure at first. We both enjoyed the outdoors, and he started teaching me how to deer hunt, which brought us even closer. At the time, I had been married for 3 years and had a toddler. I loved my husband dearly, but I realized I wasn't getting the attention I felt I needed. Somehow, I found that attention from my boss. On our first hunting trip, he had me sit in his lap so he could help me with the instructions more easily. It was awkward, but it felt nice to have someone paying attention to me. Over the next few months, our relationship progressed into a full-blown affair, kissing first and eventually doing it. Keeping it a secret was difficult, but having someone who told me he loved me and treated me like a queen gave me an immense confidence boost. After about 5 months, I started feeling guilty and worried that I couldn't keep it a secret much longer, so I decided to end things. My boss, however, who was also married to his high school sweetheart and had 2 grown children, was too invested in the relationship to want to stop. When I broke it off, he sent me a cruel text saying he regretted ever being with me, regretted helping me advance in my career, and that I didn't earn any of the privileges I had gained at work. The message devastated me. I was hurting so badly that I made the mistake of telling my husband I was quitting. When he asked why, I admitted that my boss had been making passes at me. From there, things escalated. I ended up lying and telling my husband that my boss and I had had a moment at work. I said I didn't want it, but I hadn't exactly said no. My husband, understandably alarmed, went to a friend who also acted as an HR liaison, and things began spiraling quickly. We filed a report with HR, and once I got home, I texted my boss telling him to resign or retire. I didn't want to endure the chaos that was about to unfold. I warned him it wouldn't go well and urged him to just step away quietly. About 20 minutes after I sent the message, my father-in-law, who is the chief of the volunteer fire department, came over to tell me my husband had been called out for an emergency shooting. He then told me the call was at my boss's house and that my boss had offed himself. He had made it look like a gun-cleaning accident, but I knew better. Everyone at work was devastated. I fell into a depression, and so did his wife of more than 30 years, along with his children. The HR representative dropped the report, and it was never spoken of again. It's been almost 2 years now. I live in another city, still married, and I think about my boss almost every day. It hurts to believe that I might have been what pushed him over the edge. It feels like it might as well have been my finger pulling the trigger. I'm ashamed. I carry a heavy cloud of guilt that I can't seem to shake. I don't know what else to say about it. That's the whole long story. The moral: don't sleep with your boss or convince yourself you're in love with him. Story 2. I was in a relationship with a guy for 2 years when I cheated on him. I loved him, but he didn't love me, and he was very degrading toward me. I was working the night shift at a gas station where the local police liked to hang out. I started becoming really good friends with a few of them, and a couple of weeks later, one of them began texting me. He was married to a girl whose family essentially owned the town we lived in. They had married because she got pregnant, and he was miserable too. The first night we really started talking about being together, I thought he was just messing with me. I was 18 and very naive, and he was 32. One night, he invited me over to hang out, and I went. He made me mix drinks, and I got a little tipsy. We ended up banging. I went home and cried for hours. I loved my boyfriend. How could I do this to him? I'm actually crying while writing this. Then things went from bad to worse. The cop wouldn't leave me alone, calling and texting constantly, guilt tripping me into doing it with him. I finally told him I wanted to end it. After that, he started following me and my boyfriend around, even pulling my boyfriend over for no reason. My boyfriend had suspicions, but I lied to him. Then the guy's wife called me. She told me she knew what was going on and just wanted me to record everything so she could get full custody of their child. I felt so horrible that I agreed, thinking maybe it would cancel out some of the wrong I'd done. I told her everything. I honestly thought that would be the end of it, but he kept following me, still calling me from his friends' phones. Then she told everyone what I had done. She and her family went to my boss and said I was an S-worker, and they spread a rumor that I had AIDS. This guy was only the second person I had ever been with. That affair ruined so much in my life. It happened 5 years ago, and I still think about it every single day. I still hate myself for it. It's why I feel like I don't deserve any happiness. Story 3. My husband was away for work for 6 months, and during that time, I was sleeping with a few other men, separately. I felt awful about it. I would wake up every morning physically sick from the guilt, but I didn't stop. A week before he was to come home, my husband called me out and told me he knew what had been happening. I was sure he was going to leave me. I braced myself for the outcome, stopped seeing those men, and made an appointment with a psychologist to help me understand why I had done something so reckless. When my husband came home, we screamed and we cried, but we decided to work things out. We started seeing the psychologist together for counseling, which helped. That was 7 years ago, and while I doubt I have his full trust even now, he has been a wonderful husband, forgiving me and giving me a second chance. I haven't cheated since, and I would never do anything to jeopardize our relationship again. Story 4. I had an affair with a somewhat famous married man who was also a family friend and someone I had crushed on for years. He mentored me, and over time, the tone of his messages began to change. We decided to meet alone for the first time outside of work at a hotel. We continued seeing each other for a few months, but then something strange happened. His wife sent him a text saying she was certain he was with another woman. In response, he pounded me and called her while she was taking care of their children to convince her she was paranoid. I froze. That was too far. I ended things and have since moved on. I learned that people can be deceitful, and although I enjoyed what we shared, I remain unemotional about it. He was seeing other women, which I knew, making it easier to rationalize that I hadn't truly led him astray. I now have an amazing relationship, and he has recently divorced. Story 5. I had a relationship that lasted 1 year and 2 months. 6 months into it, while my girlfriend was out of town, I ran into my ex-girlfriend at a party. She knew I was in a relationship. When I was with her before, she had broken my heart and, in a way, cheated on me, but she was insanely attractive. After a few hours of conversation and shared views, I went to the bathroom, and she followed me. We kissed, and it felt like fireworks inside me. It was incredible. We ended up meeting again for 3 nights in a row. We went out together, not in the city because I was afraid someone might see us, and I could tell she felt protected and happy. Eventually, it ended up at my home. She kept hugging me, holding my arm, and often said she felt protected with me. Looking back, maybe she had recently come out of a bad relationship, or perhaps she was just trying to make me feel powerful. When we went to bed, I felt too guilty and couldn't wake it up. It was strange, and she said she felt guilty too. We just slept the rest of the night. After that, we continued meeting and kissing. At one point, she asked, "Are you only physically attracted to me?" I don't know. Would you break up with your girlfriend for me? My ex-girlfriend was slightly chubby, but I liked it. She was busty. No chance I will do that after what you did to me. That was where it ended. I drove her home, and we never met or spoke again. It's been about 3 years. I was very worried that she would tell my girlfriend about it, but nothing happened. I occasionally check her Facebook to see what she's up to. She's still incredibly attractive. How did this interfere with my relationship back then? Almost not at all. She didn't find out, though my girlfriend may have been slightly suspicious. I felt guilty for a while, but it passed because I knew it was only physical. Story 6. This happened 2 years ago. I had been with my girlfriend for 6 years at the time, and she was the only girl I had ever slept with. At age 23, she began working at a JCPenney while we were both in college, her senior year, and made friends with another girl named Marissa, who had just turned 19. The first time Marissa came over, I hung out with them, and the tension between us was thick, to say the least. Eventually, Marissa and I exchanged numbers and started texting. After a few days, I admitted that I was extremely attracted to her, and she admitted she felt the same. At the same time, one night, my girlfriend and I were watching Korn together, and she pulled up a video of a MFF3 score. I asked my girlfriend if she would ever consider doing that, and she said that if the right girl came along, then sure. The very next day, I got a call from her at work. She told me that Marissa wanted to have a 3 score with us. October 1st rolled around, and the ladies worked out a plan. We would have a Halloween party at our place. Marissa would stay the night, and we would all do it after the party. As the month went on, Marissa continued hanging out at our place and staying the night. My girlfriend started to suspect that I liked Marissa and began stressing about the three score. Around October 15th, Marissa and I realized that my girlfriend was probably not going to go through with it, meaning Marissa and I would not be able to bang. The next day, we made plans to hang out. My girlfriend didn't have a car, so that morning, when I left to drive her to work, I pretended to lock the door. By the time I returned, Marissa was there, waiting, bare. This scenario repeated itself for 2 straight weeks, 10 hours a day, every day. After our all-day encounters, Marissa would leave when I went to pick up my girlfriend and then come back after we returned, staying the night at our place. My girlfriend knew something was off but had no idea to what extent. She began to spiral with jealousy, and I realized that my girlfriend was not the person I wanted to spend my life with. I felt as though I had wasted my young life staying with one person. On October 29th, I broke up with my girlfriend. I had never seen anyone so devastated, and I felt like the biggest piece of she. The next day, October 30th, Marissa came over for another all-day encounter. As I was pulling off the last piece of clothing she was wearing, she got a call from her mom, who had just discovered that Marissa had been skipping school and work to be with me. She ran out of my place, quickly dressing herself. I never saw her again. What followed was about a year of the most emotional pain I have ever endured. I learned that life is short, and so are the blissful moments. So take them when and how you can. Ultimately, I am thankful to have had that experience. It was a major fork in the road, and while the morality of it was definitely questionable, going through it made me a better person. Only 2 people know the full story of what happened. Now, I am leaving it here with you, Reddit. Story 7. I cheated on my boyfriend of 2 years. We had been fighting a lot, and I found out he had been cheating on me with a girl from his university. I was furious, but I forgave him. I never thought I would be a cheater, but it happened. In my spare time, I do some modeling, nothing serious, just for money. I ended up sleeping with some of the photographers. I convinced myself that because I used protection and treated it like work, I wouldn't feel bad about it. I kept sleeping with different photographers. The worst moment was with a businessman I hooked up with and ended up giving him blowy in his office. I saw pictures of his wife and kids on his desk. After that, I broke down. The reality hit me. I felt like a horrible, disgusting person. I kept it a secret from my boyfriend for months. The guilt ate me up every day. I became terribly depressed and even dropped out of school after failing many projects. One night, after drinking too much vodka, I finally confessed. He was furious, called me names, yelled exactly what I had feared. But he did not leave me. I promised I would never cheat again. I haven't, and our relationship has been improving every day. Do not cheat on your partner. It's not worth it. If a relationship isn't working out, break up. Cheating does not solve problems. It just makes you feel terrible. Story 8. My girlfriend at the time and I were already in a rocky relationship. We didn't see each other very often, so it took a long time to get close. I told her I loved her, not because I truly felt it, but because I thought she wanted me to say it. She didn't say she loved me back, which was fine. I felt terrible for saying it that way, and didn't want to put her in the same position. I don't think I ever told her I loved her again after that. She was very distant personally, and I can't recall any moments where she truly opened up to me emotionally. After the first few weeks, it often seemed like she had something on her mind that she wasn't telling me. Even so, she was incredibly kind and polite. I was going through some rough times back then, and she would check in with a simple, "You feeling okay?" She never pushed me when I didn't want to talk. Toward the end of the relationship, my best friend at the time and I started spending time together again. She had been very important to me, and we had been nearly inseparable in the years before. I didn't do it with her, but we did kiss, along with some mild groping exchanged between us. It was a sickening feeling. I felt more guilty than I ever had in my life, but I was also overwhelmed by the emotions in this connection with my best friend, emotions that had been lacking in my relationship. I should note, I had been just as cold as my girlfriend at the time. My best friend said she also regretted it and that she wouldn't continue a relationship, even if I broke up with my girlfriend. Still, the damage had been done, and my girlfriend didn't deserve to be with someone unfaithful. I decided to end it anyway, thinking that being single would do me some good, and that being alone was what I deserved. It was really hard because she was so kind. Before I even gathered the courage to act, she broke it off herself. Eventually, I told my best friend, and long story short, we dated for a while after that. There were good times, but it didn't take long for things to get rocky, drama everywhere, and no end in sight. I was definitely at fault for some of it, but she turned out to be very emotionally manipulative. Then she went and slept with several other guys behind my back. Imagine my surprise. She actually recently contacted me on Facebook, trying to reconnect. It had been years, so we were naturally talking about how much we've both changed. After about 10 messages, I realized she was the same person I had stopped talking to all those years ago. Needless to say, we don't talk now. As for what I learned, I realized how important it is not to let relationships reach these breaking points. If you're interested in someone else, it's so much easier and far more honest to end things. Even if it's just a phone call, you're a million times less of a jerk than someone who cheats. Part of the problem with my second relationship with my best friend was that I held on too long. The relationship became emotionally painful, and I stayed for months, trying to make it work. I learned that neither I nor anyone else should let things get to such awful points. If someone isn't right for you, move on and find someone who is. Don't waste a good person's time, and don't let a toxic person waste yours. Life is too short for unhappy relationships. Story 9. My relationship was stalling, and I felt neglected. I should have ended it, but I didn't because I still cared about him. The other guy was a very close friend, someone I had always shared a strange, deep, unexplainable connection with. I always suppressed it because I loved my boyfriend and wanted to be with him, not anyone else. But as the relationship became more routine and my boyfriend stayed inattentive, that friend slowly became my confidant and my best friend. The feelings I had ignored for so long became impossible to pretend away. I know I should have just ended it, but I still loved my boyfriend and wasn't thinking about that. At the same time, it felt impossible to keep myself away from the other guy. Because he was such a close friend, any distance I tried to impose quickly fell apart. One night, we ended up confessing our love for each other. It wasn't just some cheap attraction. I was in love with two people at the same time. The illicit relationship continued for a while, but as I spent more time with the new guy, I realized that I truly loved him. My feelings for my boyfriend were rooted in deep care, concern, and platonic love, not romance. I broke up with my boyfriend, though he eventually figured out that I had been unfaithful. I still feel really terrible about it. I truly cared for him, but instead of dealing with the situation honestly, I messed everything up and hurt him. It wasn't my intention. In my mind, the relationship with the other guy felt unavoidable, and I thought not telling my then boyfriend was the best way to avoid hurting him. I know that sounds terrible to everyone else, but breaking up with him felt like it would crush him, and admitting it was for another guy felt even worse. I see now how misguided that was. In the end, the other guy and I had a crazy good relationship for a long time, but we eventually broke up because we felt too serious and wanted to focus on our own lives. He's now getting married. My ex is happily in a relationship, or so I hear, we don't speak, and I'm left navigating complicated relationships that leave me more confused than happy. I guess you could say that everyone but me seems really happy, so maybe this is some sort of justice. Story 10. I recently went through an extremely messy breakup which involved me cheating. 6 months ago, I decided to move to another city to focus on my career. In our city, there weren't enough opportunities for me to advance. My boyfriend at the time, let's call him Joe, encouraged me to follow my dreams, though he refused to move with me and didn't want to try long distance. We had lived together for 4 years. My heartbreak felt one-sided. He said he was sad about our looming separation, but I never really saw it. We decided to keep living together while I saved money to move. I couldn't afford to find another place and moved twice in a matter of months, and we got along, so the arrangement worked. Until it didn't. I discovered that he had been active on adult websites with other women when I used his computer. I also found flirty Facebook messages with a girl who had tried to kiss him at a party. I was devastated. I couldn't get out of bed for several days. I didn't eat, shower, or brush my teeth. He didn't see what the big deal was, but felt terrible for causing me so much pain. He had already told his friends we were broken up, but I thought we were still a couple until I moved. We talked things over and decided to devote the last of our time together to each other and make it romantic. Stupid, stupid, stupid. A few weeks later, he went on a trip to visit his family. A coworker invited me to a party and I decided to go. I got drunk. My coworker and I made out. I told Joe about it a week after he got home. I felt awkward at work, so my coworker and I cleared the air, which led to us talking for 3 hours and him trying to kiss me again. But this time, I resisted. I told Joe that pretending to be a couple was a sham and that we should let ourselves be free. I continued seeing my coworker and did it with him. Joe found out and did not take it well. The coworker dumped me, and weeks later, I found out he had a son he never mentioned during the months we were dating. He probably had another woman too. The whole situation makes me feel cheap and dirty. Story 11. I never thought I would cheat, but then I did. I don't think it's as simple as once a cheater, always a cheater. For some, maybe, but I disagree. For me, it was a dead bedroom situation. After a decade of living in separate bedrooms, the intimacy was gone. I'd thought about divorce, and my mistake was not leaving before I fell in love with a coworker. She was quite a bit younger, which scared her at first until she realized she felt the same way. I separated and am currently going through the divorce process. I fell for someone in a way I don't think I ever had before, not even with my wife. Unfortunately, the age difference and the divorce were too much for her. Her dream was to move out west, and I knew that before we became involved. She went, and I didn't factor into that new life. She faded away, eventually called it quits, and went no contact. I still think she was the right woman. It was just bad timing. Now, I don't know if she will ever reach out again. I had my first date since the breakup last weekend. It turns out she had almost the exact same story as I did. She even slightly beat me on the age difference, which I didn't think was possible. Unfortunately, it looks like a dead end. Our date stirred up enough emotions that she's seeing him again today. My mistake was not ending my marriage earlier or fighting harder to fix what was broken. I've learned that you have to keep investing in a relationship, tell them you love them every day, and show it. Once one side stops trying and life becomes just day-to-day, you're on a slippery slope to failure. With my marriage, I also realized that I wasn't with the right person for me. Story 12. I cheated on my now ex-boyfriend of 2 years. Looking back, I didn't like him much, let alone love him. We had nothing in common. I think the real reason we were together was because he liked how I looked, and I liked that he lived on his own and had his own car. Pretty awful, I know. He seemed to believe he could treat me poorly as long as he paid for everything and bought me nice things. And as a poor student with low self-esteem, I let that situation drag on for a while. About 9 months into my relationship, I started spending time with one of my former coworkers. I had a huge crush on him when we worked together, but he was head over heels for a girl who clearly wasn't interested. Not wanting to interfere, I never acted on my feelings and distanced myself, though there was definitely chemistry between us. When we reconnected, we realized we were both dealing with the same relationship problems, feeling unappreciated and emotionally neglected by our partners. Instead of addressing those issues with them, we basically said, "Hey, we should bang." And we did. We ended up having pretty good time for a few months until we finally had awkward banging sesh, enough to snap me back to reality at least. My ex never found out about the affair, and it wasn't the reason I left him. I eventually became very close with a friend from university and realized that just sleeping with him wouldn't be enough to make me happy. I wanted a real relationship, not just physical intimacy. That was what finally pushed me to leave my ex. The breakup was awful. He believed that buying me things was how he showed love, even while treating me terribly. I felt guilty during the whole process because he took it so hard, completely unaware that I had cheated. There were moments when I wanted to tell him so he would finally leave me alone, but he was already threatening to hurt himself, and I was afraid it might push him over the edge. And honestly, part of me didn't want him to have that information to hold against me. I still see him around occasionally. I have no idea what his life looks like now, but I genuinely wish him all the best. After I broke up with my boyfriend, I started spending time with the friend I had cheated with. He wanted us to be together, but I was already interested in the man who is now my boyfriend. And as hypocritical as it sounds, I couldn't imagine trusting someone I had cheated with in the first place. He still contacts me occasionally. At first, he would send borderline inappropriate messages, but I never gave him the reaction he was hoping for. I do not think I will ever cheat on my boyfriend. I learned how important it is to work through problems if you value the relationship. And if you don't, you owe it to each other to end it instead of dragging out the misery. Story 13. Hopefully, my story will help those in situations like mine, or worse, down the road. A brief story about me and the woman I was having an affair with. We were very alike. We both worked tirelessly for our families, taking jobs we hated just to put food on the table for the people we loved. Our spouses honestly did not deserve us. I had a wife who didn't appreciate a husband who put her through school, took care of our 2 children, worked until 2 in the morning every night, and was up at 6 with the kids so she could sleep in. I cooked for her because she didn't know how and cleaned when she didn't want to, which was almost every day. The woman, let's call her Eve, was in almost the exact same situation. Her husband didn't care about her, and though he did work, he felt that was enough to avoid helping around the house. It was the woman's job to please her husband. Eve was my shift manager. For a while, we were strictly professional, until one night she had to make a delivery. Being diligent at my job, she called me crying because she was lost, and I went to her and escorted her safely. That's when our friendship began. We started talking all the time, and one day we confided in each other about the dreadful details of our marriages. Marriages that had once started with such joy, at least for her. I had married my ex-wife largely to provide my kids with the family I felt they deserved at the time. Over the years, though, both of our marriages had grown lackluster and cold. We hardly had physical intimacy with our significant others. We both knew that we were being taken advantage of. But we didn't care, because we loved the people we called our spouses. Over time, Eve and I grew to become best friends. We talked all hours of the day, checking in on each other, sharing the small details of our day, and venting about the silly fights we had with our spouses. Looking back, I realized this is when our emotional affair slowly began. We would talk about how amazing it would have been if my wife had been like her, and her husband like me. She even joked once that it was too bad we hadn't met in school. We had gone to the same school, and how happy we could have been. The physical part of our relationship started months later. My ex-wife and I had taken a nap together after I had put our 9-month-old daughter and 2-year-old son down for naps. When I woke up to get ready for work, I realized I had left my phone charging in the living room. When I returned, I found 30-plus texts from Eve. She had accidentally sent me a semi-explicit photo because my name was right under her husband's in her contacts. She had meant to entice her husband to come home, but it ended up in my hands instead. I laughed it off, told her it was okay, and even complimented her. 6 months in, without being intimate with my ex-wife, who made me feel like I had to earn the right to intimacy if she didn't want it, I found myself occasionally noticing Eve. She was an amazing woman, extremely beautiful, and over time had grown even more desirable. One night, while we were closing, we were talking, and she brought up the photo. She said she no longer felt sexy to her husband. She would do things to entice him, things most women would, and she had an incredible figure, but he wouldn't even glance. I scoffed and told her that I thought her figure was the kind you could kiss because it was that beautiful. Lame, I know. It made her smile. She touched my chest, leaned in, and gave me a look I'll never forget. It was the kind of look I remembered from the early days of my relationship with my ex-wife. The God, I want you right now look. Eve made me feel desired and sexy, something my ex-wife had stopped doing. I had become someone who was expected to perform on command. From that moment, the intimacy between us grew. Our texts became increasingly inappropriate. We talked about our intimate lives, what we missed, and how we longed to feel that desire again. One night, her car broke down as we were closing. I offered to take her home since it was unusually cold that Texas winter, but she already had a tow truck on the way. I stayed behind to keep her company. My older car didn't have heat, so I did what any guy would do. I gave her the jacket off my back. It was cold, and the jacket was large, so she suggested we hold each other in it to stay warm. It wasn't an awkward, socially awkward penguin moment. It felt natural, like it was supposed to happen. As we held each other, keeping warm while watching the tow truck down the road, she looked up at me, and I looked down at her. Almost instinctively, we leaned in, and the electricity between us was instant the moment our lips met. She jumped back slightly, the classic, oh my god, we just did that reaction. I felt the oh crap moment. Had I really just kissed another woman? What am I thinking? Before I could dwell on it, she kissed me again, and everything else faded away. We made out for a solid minute, hot, intense, and completely mutual. As the tow truck pulled up, she stopped, gave me a smile I had never seen before, and walked away. I couldn't sleep that night. I didn't dare say anything to my ex-wife, and the question that ran through my mind all night was, why didn't I feel guilty? Time passed. We continued working together, exchanging glances and smiles. It felt too right. She was like my best friend, and I was married. So why had what happened with Eve happened? Why didn't I feel guilty? One night, we closed together again. I knew I had to understand what was happening. Before she left, I told her I needed to talk. She leaned in and held me tight. Her perfume smelled incredible, and the curves of her body pressed against me in a way that felt amazing. Thank you. Huh? I hadn't felt that sexy, that wanted, in forever. Before I could respond, she kissed me again. We stood there for about 30 minutes, making out, gradually more intense. It ended with me pressed against the wall, and admittedly, I was very aroused. She could feel it, and with a final kiss, she said, "Think this is a sign we need to go home." We closed the next night, and from then on, it repeated every time. She would whisper in my ear how turned on she was by me, how much she wanted me. She would reach into my pants and slowly touch me. I would have my hands under her shirt and bra, grabbing her. She loved the way I would slowly slide her shirt off her shoulder and kiss from her shoulder up her neck. I loved the way she moaned in my ear. Was this what I wanted? To feel desired? To feel good enough? We sent explicit pictures to each other. She would tell me how she wanted me inside her. I admit I wanted that too. But we always brought our marriages into the conversation and, by unspoken agreement, acted as if nothing had happened. Even worse, our spouses never suspected a thing. This went on for months. My head was a daze at this point. One night, my ex-wife got into an argument with me about how she never got to go out. No one had stopped her. I would have let her go if she wanted, but she never did, which, ironically, contributed to our divorce. I did everything for her, and then she got mad when I tried to initiate intimacy. She called me a S-fiend, consumed by it. Addicted. How? Once a week, maybe more. I just wanted to feel the physical love between us. She had a temper. After a heated argument, she threatened to leave me. Normally, I'm as calm as a stoner, but my blood was boiling. I angrily told her to go ahead because that's what I had been trained for in our marriage, to do everything on my own without her help. She took our kids and left for her mom's. And admittedly, I was glad. I needed a night away from them. I went and got a bottle of Disaronno, poured myself a drink, and my phone started ringing. It was Eve. I answered, and she was crying. Her husband had hit her. She had left her daughter at her mom's and needed to go for a drive. She was in tears and wanted nothing to do with him. I, of course, invited my best friend over. She needed comfort, didn't she? I poured her a drink. It turned out to be her favorite, and we talked for hours. By around 3 in the morning, we were both buzzed. I looked at her and told her she didn't deserve that. She said she wished she could have ended up with me. Not a guy like me, but me. We kissed. I was on top of her, both of us engaged fully, grabbing one another. She reached into my pants almost instinctively, and I had undone her pants, exploring as though a kid in a candy store. Before we knew it, I was face first between her legs, giving her pleasure like it was the only thing that mattered. She was moaning my name in ecstasy. We went all the way. I threw her on my bed, and we made love intensely all night. By morning, reality set in. It hit her first. She had that look of, "What have I done?" on her face when we woke up. I knew it too. She took a shower, we exchanged small talk, and then she left. We hardly spoke for the next few days. My wife came back, apologizing, never suspecting a thing. And as horrible as it was, I didn't feel any remorse. That night, I confronted Eve. I asked her why she was avoiding me. Isn't it obvious? That shouldn't have happened. I know, but treating it like it didn't happen, like I didn't exist, won't help. Looking back now, I understand why it affected me so much. I needed that attention. She had mentioned after we were done that she never came that hard before. I have an ego, one of my many flaws, and in a terrible moment it came out. Are you mad at me because I did it better than your husband could? Story 14. So, I was the other woman. I was 18, working in a lab, and there was a married postdoc who would occasionally buy me beer. Yes, I know. We became friends, of a sort. I tried to act oblivious to his obvious flirtation. Eventually, he started drinking the alcohol he bought with me, and one day, he kissed me. One thing led to another, and we slept together for about a month. As for why it happened, I think he was probably the least mature 31-year-old on Earth. He was married and about to have a child, yet he still acted like a teenager in many ways. I was mostly a prop for his ego. Since his wife was pregnant, he found her less attractive, and she was more demanding, asking him to play less WoW and come home before 9 every night. And I was just this young thing, impressed that he had a real job and a PhD, not asking for much of his time, and accepting the fact that he was trying to sleep with other students at the university without question. On my end, it happened because I was an idiot. I let my attraction to someone outweigh my sense of decency. The weekend his wife gave birth, I shut down. I stopped talking to him except very formally at work. I had already been battling my own self-loathing, but the fact that he wanted to ignore his responsibilities as a father to spend time with me finally made me repulsed by him too. I never told anyone. Story 15. I like to think this one is a bit unique. My girlfriend cheated on me early in the relationship. She tried to make it up to me, and I let it slide. But later, she broke up with me to pursue another guy. He used her and then ditched her, and she came crawling back to me. At the time, I was pretty vulnerable, and her actions triggered some major self-esteem issues. I started coping in the only way I knew how. From that point forward, I began regularly seeing other women on the side, sometimes several at once. I'd woo them, get them to fall head over heels for me. I actually became really good at it, then ditch them. Afterward, I would try to focus on my relationship, but usually after about 3 to 6 months, I would start seeking out someone new on the side. I even fell in love a time or two, but it never really panned out. On her end, she can't stop chasing after other guys, but she's a bit too obvious to actually pull it off. It's something we're always trying to work on, though I doubt it will ever really change. Once we break up, she'll probably party for a few years, then get really depressed and end up with a lot of cats. When your sense of self-worth relies on men wanting to sleep with you, the older you get, the more worthless you start to feel. It's strange typing it out. In my day-to-day life, I hardly think about it. When I'm with her, I'm happy. At least, most of the time. I know it's awful, but I just don't feel much of anything about it anymore. I wonder if I'll tell her when we break up. Probably not. She still thinks I'm a kind soul who puts up with her transgressions and is fighting hard for both of us. Somehow, I'd hate for that version of me to completely disappear, even if it isn't who I am anymore, who I have been for a long time. Now, I'm just something else masquerading as that person, walking around in their skin. 3 cheers for healthy relationships, huh? Story 16. I didn't so much have an affair as a somewhat planned one-night stand, which didn't turn out as planned either. I was in a long-distance relationship during my first year of high school. Yeah, I was a kid. And we only met on weekends, maybe 1 to 3 times a month. I paid for every trip, I think. About a month into that first year of high school, I noticed a really, really attractive guy. Brown hair with a gray streak on the right side. Green eyes. I got a crush on him while still happy in my long-distance relationship. I befriended him at school. God knows where I found the guts to do so. Not only was he gorgeous, but he was also kind, funny, and genuinely seemed to want to spend time with me, something I wasn't used to. We became great friends. 10th grade ended, and I had to go home for the summer from boarding school. But we kept talking a lot. He even came to visit once. When school started back up, remember I was still in a long-distance relationship with another guy, we were inseparable, to the point where his friends started complaining about him spending all his time with me. I still had a boyfriend at the time, who was crushing on his best friend's girlfriend. I'll never know if he or I cheated first, I never asked him. But after a night out with some drinking, yes, I was underage, I missed my bus home and decided to spend the night at my crush's place. I knew I would never have a serious relationship with him. He was adamant about not being serious with anyone at that point, so I took what I could get. I told my boyfriend the very next day, and after trying to patch our relationship together for about a month, we broke up. A few weeks later, to my great surprise, my crush asked me if I wanted to date him seriously. A few weeks after that, we started our relationship, and we've now been together for 7 years. Story 17. The first time I cheated, it happened twice. This was my first relationship, and I was a nerdy late bloomer with pretty low self-esteem. Just smart enough to get in trouble, but not smart enough to get out of it. I latched onto the first person who gave me attention and paid the price in the end. I'm a high school dropout and entered the workforce full-time at 16. She was as well, except for the workforce part. Long story short, she was physically abusive. And as a man, it's pretty embarrassing to lie about a black eye when you go into work the next day. And I don't mean that it's any less embarrassing for a woman. I've been there too. Each gender deals with its own specific problems in this regard, and they are no less important or valid than the others. While I was at work, she would take my car, hang out with our all-male friend group, smoke weed, and most likely sleep with them. No, I'm bitter, but I still doubt it, because most of them were pretty pathetic, and over half were grossly overweight. Regardless, she was domineering, and the classic abusive relationship tropes were present. Female friends? I must want to sleep with them. That car that sped past you with a female driver? Why the hell did you check her out? Why would you want to go to your company Christmas party? You must be sleeping with someone there. Eventually, I figured that if I was going to be punished for infidelity, I might as well get the fun parts out of it too. The first lady was a 26-year-old that came through the drive-thru, revenge banging someone because of her own husband's affair. We had good times, and some of the best blowies I've ever received was in that fast food parking lot. She had 2 kids that she would awkwardly bring in for ice cream while arranging times for us to do it at my mom's house. It ended with her guilt. Bear with me, this next one is a mouthful. She was the eldest daughter of the woman that my father was banging and that caused my parents' divorce. It was an opportunity for both of us to get back at them, and a power move for me. I won't lie. It was also easy for me to get away from my girlfriend by saying I was spending the night with my dad. We did it 2 or 3 times, and it was pretty fun. I think the forbidden aspects of it were more of a turn-on than anything else. She was a pretty girl, but nothing like her mother. My second relationship also marks the end of my first relationship. She was an indirect superior at my job, 28 at the time, while I was 20. She was dating someone at the office, and through instant messages at work, our flirting escalated until I spent the night at her apartment for the first time. Sneaking past her sleeping sister's room at night, we didn't even bang the first time. I slept on her floor, and in the middle of the night I woke up holding her hand, and in the fogginess of sleep, we kissed. When I returned home, hell unleashed. A busted door jamb, a stab wound to me with a screwdriver, and a broken foot on her. That relationship ended with me calling her parents and taking her to the emergency room. I have to add this in parentheses as it goes here chronologically, but is a fuzzy period while I was still kind of committed to the second relationship. During this time, I slept with the second married woman, a cute college graduate at the same office. We did it twice, and that relationship ended with her in tears from guilt, an awkward pullout, and me feeling more than a little scummy. She continued to pursue the affair, but I wasn't putting myself in that position again, or so I thought. And so began the second relationship. As it progressed, I began to grow into who I was. Rules number 1 and 2 started to work in my favor. I've got pretty blue eyes. I'm fairly intelligent, and I know that listening isn't just waiting for my turn to talk, thus my conundrum. My whole life I had been the object of scorn, and while in love with this other woman, I was suddenly the object of desire. She was older than me, and her intimate experience was intimidating to the young me. I felt that if I married her, I would miss out on all the fun she had had. My chance for a 3 score was gone, hers fulfilled, etc. Couple those issues and insecurity with a dying bedroom, and it was no surprise when I looked up my crush from high school, the untouchable head of the cheerleading team. I won't lie, it wasn't out of nobility but of vindication. We met at a park and ended up making out in the parking lot. I got obviously turned on, but we didn't do anything more. Half out of nervousness and half because a bum came up asking for money. We parked by my nice red sports car. He probably thought all he had to say was that we made a beautiful, sweet couple. Little did he know. That relationship got dangerous. I seriously considered leaving my current relationship for her. After all, Who doesn't dream of going back to high school and being with the hottest, seemingly unattainable girl? We had great time in bed, but her mother had instilled debilitating body issues in her in that classic pageant mother way. She would never allow me to see her lower half and refused to let me do anything. It was frustrating for me because I'm good at what I do. Anyway, it was still a magical experience, the first time a girl drove herself down onto me, practically asking for it. That one eventually ended with her revealing an engagement ring she had hidden from me since day one. She postponed her wedding, and we almost had a go at it, but she was too worried about leaving her comfort zone, and I wasn't going to make the first jump. Eventually, she eloped with her fiancé, much to her mother's delight. The next affair was with a woman I had sold a car to. Of course, I had found my way into a job that not only utilized but honed my skills of persuasion. It was also a great cover because of the erratic hours. That relationship lasted for nearly a year. No strings, no inhibitions. We'd meet at least weekly. She never knew I was technically in a 6-year relationship at the time, joking that she really thought I was a spy. She didn't ask too many questions, and she was very flexible. Sadly, that relationship ended when she decided she wanted the other parts of a relationship. Cuddling, movies, that kind of thing. Which, obviously, though not to her why, I couldn't provide. After that, I was driving my car down the road one day when I busted the tires, distracted by a jogger I initially assumed was Indian, but who turned out to be Venezuelan. How did I know? Well, she was running in a circuit, and I wasn't going anywhere fast. When I saw her again, I invited her over, jokingly blaming her for the tire mishap. We shared a few laughs, and she posed for pictures. I felt I had to tell my fiancé what had happened, so after the visit, I called her and told her the truth. Unfortunately, the pictures ended up on Facebook. Now, the second half of that story is what she doesn't know. While I was waiting for the tow truck, Ms. Jogger came back. Heels, a short skirt, and a black tube top. She brought 2 girly Zimas, or whatever they were, saying, "Well, I thought you should at least get something out of it." I was too nervous to act because I knew my fiancé was going to start getting suspicious about my lack of communication and genuinely worry. It's really too bad, because I know for a fact that had I wanted to pursue it, that night could have ended in some fantastic banging. As it turned out, she pulled away literally 2 minutes before my worried fiancé showed up. Bullet dodged. We had several dates, but it never went physical. Honestly, I blew it. I started falling for her and became nervous in a way I never am around beautiful women. So it ended awkwardly, and I regret it. Not just for missing the physical connection, but for failing to maintain my own composure. As it stands, I'll probably do it again. My fiancé isn't very affectionate, not due to a lack of enthusiasm on my part. I'm not hung like a horse, but I am above average. To me, celebrating the beauty of a woman's body by pleasuring her is like learning an instrument, finding the right range of notes, pressing the right keys. Even playing the same song is a new adventure with a different instrument. She probably has her suspicions, and as contradictory as it might sound, I respect her too much for blatant displays. For me, it's more about what she doesn't know. In her eyes, it's the kind of situation where you don't ask questions you don't want answers to. Story 18. We met at work. She joined our team, and we instantly hit it off. We got along far better on a casual level than my wife and I ever did, and were generally interested in the same kind of nonsense. We could even have those casual debates about big things and small things, and we were genuinely interested in each other. At the time, my wife and I were heading into a particularly rough point in our 7-year relationship. By the time the Christmas party rolled around, the inevitable happened. We ended up in the same bed, snuggling and falling asleep together. Going home after that was awful. I could barely look at or talk to my wife. I felt like someone had ripped my soul apart. The other woman and I continued to hit it off. We sat next to each other in the office until one day we admitted we were crazy about each other. Soon after, we finally kissed. It was amazing, magical, and empowering. The kind of connection I had always wanted. We began meeting regularly and going out, although it was incredibly difficult since my wife had friends everywhere, and I was extremely nervous. I realized slowly that I was falling in love with her, and it wasn't just an office fling. Sitting next to her at work was amazing, but the hard days were brutal. I would go to work and be in one relationship, then come home and be in a completely different one. The only downtime I had was my 20-minute commute. Then I discovered that I had lost a significant amount of money and had to tell my wife. She understandably went crazy, unloading on me about how much she hated me, listing everything she resented and saying that the only reason we were still together was because of our children. The affair continued for a little while longer, even as things at home deteriorated. Then we went on a pre-planned family holiday, which was terrible. Practically every day involved bickering and arguments, and on the way back, we had an especially terrible row. The next day, I went to see the other woman to tell her that even though I had previously said we couldn't be together because of my kids, I had decided I was ready to commit to her if she wanted. We lay on her bed and cuddled, and she said, "I've met someone else." It turned out she had gone to a party, met a guy she instantly connected with, and is still with him. So, here I am. I've just put my kids to bed. I'll go downstairs and probably have a chilly evening with my wife and get through Sunday. On Monday, I'll go to work and sit next to someone I still love, someone I was ready to give my life for, but who left me just before I could act. I'll listen as she talks about her weekend, nod and smile, and die a little inside. Then I'll go home to my wife. What did I learn? That you don't know what it's like to have an affair until you have one. It is incredibly hard physically, mentally, and spiritually. Conversely, it is filled with moments of joy and utter love. That if they don't have kids, they won't understand at all the sacrifice you are making to be with them. Don't have an affair with someone you work with, or not at least someone you'll have to spend all day with, especially after. Story 19. I cheated on my boyfriend of 3 years when I was 18. I met a guy in a club, and we dated for 2 months before I finally got the courage to break up with my boyfriend. I didn't tell him the real reason because I didn't want to hurt him more than necessary. He was a very good guy and hadn't done anything wrong. I just told him I wasn't in love with him anymore. It was really sad. He cried a lot. We stayed friends for almost 1 year before he told me it was too hard for him to see me only as a friend, so we stopped hanging out and talking after that. It was 6 years ago, and I still feel guilty because I know it was really hard for him, even though we were young. I'm still in a relationship with the guy I cheated with, and I'm still in love with him. Story 20. I got married quite quickly after meeting my now ex-husband. We were both in the depths of depression at the time, and we somehow saved each other from it for a while. He was a virgin when we met. He was 25 then, but he was an eager learner. I thought that, with time, intimacy would move past the going through the motions stage and become passionate and loving. It never did. I'd always been very intimately active, whether in relationships or while single, having one-night stands and flings. Over time, we also realized we had very little in common. I was very social and loved going out drinking, dancing, and partying, while he preferred staying home and spending hours on the internet. He hated being around other people. After we had been married for about 1 year, I ran into a guy I went to school with, someone I had dated back then and who had always been the one who got away. We had slept together a few years earlier a handful of times when I was single, and his marriage was going through a rough patch, so the chemistry between us was still there. We started meeting during our lunch breaks or after work to sleep together or have long, intense makeout sessions in his car. We admitted we had feelings for each other. After several months, he completely disappeared. He stopped replying to my emails. Email was the only way we communicated so we could keep things secret. I was hurt, but I carried on with my marriage. A few months later, the guy I had been having the affair with contacted me and told me he had left his wife. He said it had nothing to do with us, but that he hadn't told me when it happened because he didn't want me leaving my husband for him. That wasn't what he wanted. I told him it was better if we stopped all contact and that my husband must never find out. Even now, he has no idea. I also made out with a few other random people I met and never saw again. He never knew about those either, and no one else in my life did either. 2 years later, I came home one day to my husband telling me he had slept with a woman he met online a couple of times and that we had to split up. Somehow, this felt different from what I had done because I was the only person he had ever slept with and he had no confidence at all. Somehow, I managed to rationalize what I had done with that line of thinking, and so we split up. Everyone assumed he was the bad guy, and I got everything I deserved. He is now in a new relationship and is very happy. Meanwhile, I am still single 3 years later, struggling with massive trust issues, both in other people and in myself. After being hurt like that by someone I believed would never betray me, I can't trust myself not to stray again and hurt someone I care about. I broke myself because of my affair. Story 21. Everyone here seems so noble. My wife and I were fighting terribly. We stopped doing it. He was abusive and difficult. So let me fill the asshole quota for this thread with my horrendous story from a few years back. Full disclaimer, this was the worst experience of my life, which has otherwise not been privileged, and I deservedly have some form of PTSD from it. I met Stacy around Christmas. I thought she was stunning, blonde, smart, and just plain fun. So I tried to make a move, but I got shot down. She slept with a friend that night. That is the kind of person she was, which, honestly, I actually liked. So I pushed her out of my mind. A few days later, I met Jen at a bar. She was great, smart, from a good family, well-to-do, kind, an outstanding cook, a redhead, everything. Her one flaw was that she was a bit on the corny side and had a slightly unhealthy preoccupation with settling down, which came up early and often. She had a wild side too, which I loved, but it was nothing compared to Stacy. Both of these women were a few years younger than me. By spring, Jen and I were seeing more of each other. While I enjoyed her company, we lacked a certain fire or spark. She was exactly the kind of girl your mom wants you to end up with, and she was great in bed, but I still felt something was missing. I made it clear we were not exclusive, and she seemed fine with that. I ran into Stacy at a bar a few months later, where mutual friends were throwing a party. This time, we clicked. It was electric. Some people you just mesh with, and we meshed flawlessly. I resolved to do the right thing and tell Jen that, while it had been fun, we should stay friends. But for some reason, I waited. Jen was going away for the summer anyway, and I figured she would move on then. Big mistake. Stacy and I started seeing more of each other, and I was seeing both of them more frequently. Stacy asked to be exclusive, and I agreed. Now, all I had to do was tell Jen it was over. But before I could, I had to fly out of town for work. Long story short, Stacy slept with someone else while I was gone and lied about it. Worse, she contracted, this is horrendous, a curable STD, and had the audacity to accuse me of giving it to her, which was unfathomable since I always use condoms and had been tested a week before the accusation. For the record, I never got it. So I held off on dumping Jen. I dumped Stacy and told her to stay out of my life. But it did not stick. Stacy lingered, promising to reform, to fix things, to do whatever it took. I was torn, and then Jen abruptly left town for her scheduled trip. It was just Stacy and me now. That summer, Stacy and I made up. We reconciled. I promised myself that as soon as Jen got back, I would end it. But before Jen returned, Stacy and I got into a massive fight. I began wondering if I was looking for a reason to end things with her, as if I resented her for everything she had put me through. So I did not break up with Jen, who was ecstatic to see me when she came back from her holiday. I did the worst possible thing for my conscience. I dated both of them at the same time. My original thinking was deeply flawed, but I convinced myself that one of them would eventually dump me. It had to happen. I basically handed off the responsibility for making the relationship decision to one of them. Part of me also assumed I would be caught quickly, but I never was. In fact, neither of them dumped me, and for more than 1 year, this messed up situation continued. I slept with both, went out with both, and some of my friends saw me with both. I felt like the worst kind of criminal. Walter White hiding things from his son and family comes to mind. If anyone is still reading this, please take my words seriously. It destroyed my spirit and ate at my soul. I found myself on planes hoping they would crash just so I could be forced out of the situation. It was that bad. By this point, Stacy had largely reformed. She never lied, and our love and spark felt genuinely real. But I had tainted everything with my own deception. That deception was not born from a desire to sleep with 2 women, but from indecisiveness and, to some extent, the belief that if one relationship failed on its own, the other would naturally thrive. It was like having 2 overlapping safety nets while I walked a razor-thin high wire. But the biggest reason I could not make a move was simple. I did not want anyone to get hurt. In fact, I wanted myself to be the one who suffered. I wanted both of them to hate me and leave me. I even considered telling them I had cheated, but I knew that while it was the truth, it would crush them. People who discover they have been deceived often suffer far more long-term psychological damage than the deceivers, and they end up questioning everything. I did not think they deserved that. Finally, I had to make a choice. Stacy was the passionate, is right option. Jen was the safe, felt right option. But by splitting my time, attention, and life between them, I had never truly gained a clear picture of either of them, or of my own feelings. Was my resentment of Jen's corniness simply compensation for being around Stacy so much? Was my coldness towards Stacy an act because I knew how warm Jen could be? I had also become meticulously deceitful, like running a spy ring. I grew skilled at crafting plausible excuses, using aliases, and justifying reasons I could and could not do things. Anyway, after realizing that the longer this continued, the greater the suffering for one or both of them, I made my choice and stuck with it. Breaking up with one of the women was heartbreaking, and I immediately felt as if I had made the wrong choice and would be haunted by it forever. I still feel that way, but by that point both options were so tainted that any choice felt false and wrong. My companion and my ex still have no idea of the massive deception, and I will probably take it to my grave. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.